right, everyone. Welcome to the first lecture. Thanks for being here. So this is the introduction to the course, and we're just going to give you a feel for what you'll be learning here over the next several weeks in the lecture series. All right, so why did we create this lecture series? It's a good question. So I travel a lot, and in my travels I meet a lot of entrepreneurs and business people and founders and investors, especially younger ones. And yeah, you guys are great. You're building global businesses by default. You're amazing, no doubt, generating 6, 7, 8 figures in revenue. And you're really, really good at creating value. And that's amazing, and you're to be commended, to be sure. But a similar pattern does pop up over and over again in my experience. And that is that you guys are brilliant at making money, but you're completely unprepared for the next step, for what to do with the money once it starts rolling in. More specifically, you don't understand the basics of business law, and you don't really understand how legal structures work and what their function is. So in essence, you don't really know how to then deal with lawyers and legal professionals. And then that gap in knowledge when it comes to business law starts to catch up with you if it hasn't already. And then you lose a lot of money. So we don't want you left scratching your head thinking, what the hell just happened there? So yeah, we created this course to help business people interact with their legal professionals effectively. Because once your business starts growing, dealing with lawyers, dealing with tax advisors, maybe trustees, regulators is no longer optional. You have to deal with these guys. It's inevitable. So if you don't understand the fundamentals of business law, then the temptation is to start improvising. And then that's when things are going to go off the rails. So we see this all the time. People copy structures from the internet. We see that one a lot. So they'll see some video on YouTube or some short called Copy My Structure. You know the ones, you've seen them. And then it blows up in their face. So don't do that. That's how money gets lost. You do not follow legal advice with no context. Someone else's structure will not work for you. You've got your own unique situation. Everybody does. And you really, really need to avoid pitfalls like that. That was the inspiration for this lecture series. I've seen people with real businesses set up completely batshit crazy entities and structures, trusts, offshore companies, expensive, unnecessary solutions. And they did it not because they needed it, but because some guy on YouTube told them it was a good idea or that they should. It's not sophisticated, guys, and it can be dangerous. All right, another one that we'll see all the time is you'll meet an entrepreneur and they'll start talking to you really quickly about trusts. And then you get 2 questions in and you realize they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. They don't know what a trust is or its function within their business. And then you ask them a few questions and you realize, oh, they're setting up a trust in the Cook Islands or something. And that's just because some guy on YouTube told them it would be a good idea. Obviously, it's expensive. It's unnecessary in their specific case, usually. Best case scenario, they lose 5 figures and a bit of time. They learn a lesson. Worst case scenario, they lose a decade and they can't undo it. All right, so we're going to fix that gap in knowledge in this lecture series. Right, to be clear, this is a foundational course for entrepreneurs. It's not for law students. Obviously, if you're a law student, feel free to stay, but it is not designed for you. Business people need to understand the basics of business law, the foundational concepts, so they can ask good questions and make good decisions, right? And then they can work properly with lawyers and their legal professionals. That's what we're teaching in this lecture series. This is not academic, it's practical. This stuff is not complicated, guys. If you can start a business and generate even $1 in revenue, you can understand this stuff. It's not about copying anyone else's structure from the internet. You can think of it as practical legal literacy for business people like yourselves, presumably. All right, important to understand, we're not selling anything here. The content is free. We don't want your money. Keep it. You got a lot of bills coming in. You're under a lot of stress. We get it. We've been there. So we're here to help. The goal of the series is simple, guys. It's education, purely and simply. We're going to teach you the basics of business law. And then you can go out and interact with your lawyers and legal professionals properly and effectively and keep your hard-earned money. These legal professionals bill at $200, $300, $400, $500 an hour minimum these days. It's insane. All right, so who the hell am I? Why listen to me? Great question. Well, I'm a successful entrepreneur just like you, but I am also a law graduate from one of the top law schools in the world. So basically, I'm an entrepreneur like you, but I have a law degree. I know the law. I'm going to pass that knowledge on. All right, so the series is for people like you, entrepreneurs who are good at making money, but have no idea how to structure and keep the money. All right, so another important point before we get into the rest of the introductory lecture is that none of this stuff is specific to any jurisdiction. So all of this stuff that we teach is broad business law principles, and they're foundational to every legal system. Obviously, the details will vary between jurisdictions and legal systems, but the principles are the same. So it doesn't matter if you're in Mexico or the US or Europe or the Philippines or Singapore or wherever, you get the idea. You will benefit from this knowledge and you will keep more of your money. All right, so making money is not the same skill as keeping money. This is actually inspired by a John McAfee quote. If you don't know who John McAfee is, you should definitely look him up. He's the OG rock star entrepreneur. There's a great series about him on Netflix, actually. You should definitely watch it if you're able to. He is the founder of McAfee Antivirus, worth maybe $100 million at the height of his wealth. Yeah, he died in a Spanish prison a few years ago, inauspiciously. Look him up, read the story, crazy story. He has a great quote. He says, "Making money, any idiot can do that. That any idiot is you, presumably. You're making money. But keeping it, there are very few who can do that." So we're here to teach you the legal principles to help you move from this skill set to this skill set. That's our aim in this lecture series. All right, so another question you might have. Why don't I just get a lawyer to do this stuff? Yeah, sure, yes, a lawyer is going to execute. A lawyer is going to do the filings. A lawyer is going to do the contracts. A lawyer is going to execute on all the parts of the transaction. But you have to engage with and instruct the lawyer. They can guide you, but ultimately they follow your instructions. So you're going to need at least some basic understanding of what's going on. All right, so that's what we're here for. The lecture series is here to teach you how to think. Because if you blindly follow legal advice and you don't understand why, you're going to get screwed. Even if you intend on plugging everything into ChatGPT, you will still need to understand how to prompt ChatGPT correctly and how to at least basically understand the output. All right, so when you interact properly with the legal professionals who have almost certainly entered your life, you're going to save yourself a lot of money, and you're going to save everyone a lot of time, hassle, and stress. Remember, the lawyers are also under a lot of pressure. They have a lot of responsibility, a lot of clients, and long hours. They do not want morons for clients. They would much prefer to deal with people who know what they're doing, even if theoretically a moron would lead to more billable hours for them. They trust me, they much prefer to deal with people who know what they're doing. So we're going to make you one of those people. All right, so we're going to start with a simple idea. Remember, this is just the introduction to the course, right? So we're going to get into it in the next one. But we're going to just ground the course in this introductory lecture. And the primary problem that we see, the gap in understanding between the legal professionals and the business people, can be boiled down to one thing, and that is structure. All right, I haven't written for a while, excuse the writing. Structure before understanding, right? So this is the commonality across all issues, right? Everyone's in a rush to structure before they understand what's going on. That is the simple idea, all right? So you'll see people when they're starting in business, sometimes before they've even made $1 in revenue or done anything, they'll ask you, what's the best setup? Should I get a trust? People are obsessed with trusts, I guess because you associate it with rich people or something. Or they'll say, what jurisdiction is the best, right? So what's the issue? Well, they're not beginner questions. These are later stage questions, guys. So you can think of like Alibaba, for example, actually a very good example. Yes, Jack Ma's Alibaba. So one of the biggest e-commerce, one of the biggest businesses in the world, and it existed and it was growing super aggressively before any clean legal structure existed. So early on, Jack Ma built momentum, relationships, cash flow first, and then the corporate form lagged behind and evolved later. So you don't need to ask structure questions too early, and you certainly shouldn't ask them before you have basic understanding, right? Because if you do, then what you will notice is that law doesn't fix bad thinking. It'll lock it in, all right? So what are we dealing with here? On one side, we have entrepreneurs, and they're dealing with flow problems, right? Okay, so presumably you're watching this, you're a business person or entrepreneur, you're making money, and you're used to flow problems. But the law, on the other side, deals with structure problems, right? I've written them on either side because you can think of them almost as opposite skills, right? I want to drill that in. So flow problems are what entrepreneurs deal with. They're things like speed, right? Go fast, break things. It's a competitive landscape. You've got a lot of competitors. You've got to go fast. Iteration, right? So you pivot. Your first idea doesn't work well, and then you go on to the next one. You change direction a little bit. These are the kind of concepts you're used to. And obviously, risk, right? Then on the other opposite side, if you're a lawyer, or if you're working in the legal system, you're thinking differently. You're thinking about what the law thinks about, or what the law understands, which is slow wealth accumulation, right? This is how the law is working foundationally. It understands slow wealth accumulation. It understands clear geography. Anyone who's tried to run a business automatically understands how asinine and stupid and silly legal systems can seem when it comes to geography. These are old systems, guys. They were built for a different time. They're thousands of years old sometimes. So they understand slow wealth accumulation, clear geography, and they understand long, predictable timelines, right? So they're coming from opposite sides of the coin. So you need to go from here to here in your understanding. You need to switch when you're dealing with your legal professionals. We're going to help you do that. So if I had to boil it down, I would say that on this side, you've got entrepreneurship, and this is compressing time, whereas law, it assumes time. All right, so completely different timelines. If you confuse them and if you don't respect that, then you will lose money, and you'll lose money in slow ways that don't feel so dramatic, but in a worst case scenario could be irreversible. So you can think of that famous quote you've probably heard before. I think it might have been F. Scott Fitzgerald, some author, maybe Mark Twain, I don't know, look it up. But they asked him, how did you go broke? And he said, slowly at first, then all of a sudden. All right, so this is you over here, but then once money and revenue and success start to appear, then you need to, one of your jobs changes, so you have to adapt. So, all right, important to understand is that we're not giving legal advice here. That's not the aim of this channel. We're explaining you how to think about these issues, okay? So, how does the law think about the world foundationally, right? Again, these are just very, very basic core foundational concepts to give you an idea of whether you want to stick around and immerse yourself in this lecture series. So what is the law doing basically? Well, it's dealing with three things, three things, right? Control is the first one. It's dealing with risk. And we went through already, it's dealing with time. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, the law is primarily dealing with how to allocate control, how to assign risk, and how to stretch decisions across time. Again, introductory. We'll go into more detail with this stuff from the next lecture onwards, right? But that is what the law is doing. So, the real question that the law asks and answers, who gets to decide, right? Control. Who bears the downside, right? Risk. And what happens when circumstances change? Time. That's what the law is doing. So this stuff to the law matters way, way more than any clever optimization you think you've come up with or some idiot on YouTube told you was a good idea. All right, so important to understand also is that unlike with business, legal mistakes are not easily reversible. So in your business, you make a mistake in the direction or product, sure, it can be tedious and expensive, but it can be reversed. You can pivot, right? But with the law, decisions that are injected into your business can become very slow and expensive, or in a worst case scenario, impossible to undo, right? So don't be reckless and don't be confident too early. One of my earliest mentors said something to me I remember almost every day. He said to me, whenever anyone is trying to get you to speed up, slow down. So we're here to slow you down, guys, before those mistakes get locked in. All right. Now remember, I'm not here to give legal advice. I am not your lawyer. I have no interest in being anybody's lawyer. I'm not here to sell you a structure. I'm not here to funnel you through to some law firm. I don't have a law firm. I'm not selling you anything, nothing, right? In this lecture series, we are going to go through trusts and foundations, your favorite. Everyone loves trusts. Companies and ownership, how to work with lawyers effectively and practically, why asset protection will very often fail in the general, and why your complex structure may feel smart but will act stupid. So if you stick around, then we'll get you to ask better questions, hopefully. And if you ask better questions, then you should get better outcomes with your legal professionals. All right, so all the lecture notes are on Substack. They're brief summaries of the lectures, very brief. So you can use those in conjunction with the lectures. Again, we know everyone's busy. We're not training lawyers here. You just need to know the essentials. We get it. You just want to work effectively with your own lawyers and legal professionals. So the lecture notes are going to be really brief. All right? The course is divided into 4 sections. The first section is going to deal with how to get you to think clearly about the law. So it's mental models. Section 2 is going to deal with understanding legal vehicles. Section 3 is going to deal with risk and time. And then section 4 is about succession and permanence and passing assets through time. Or if you're more inclined to die with zero, then we'll teach you how to effectively do that. or at least think about how you can do that with your lawyers. All right, important to remember that the lectures build on each other. So if you skip one, it's going to be very hard to follow on to the next one. That's why we built the Substack. The Substack summaries are short, but if you need a real quick summary, then you can just take the Substack notes, plug them into your AI chatbot of choice, and then you'll get an even more precise summary, and you'll be ready for the next lecture. And yeah, it's all free. All this content is free. The Substack, the YouTube, everything. All right. So the next lecture is where we really start. That's the start of section 1. Again, this is just an introductory lecture. So that's going to deal with, we're going to get you to understand how the law actually thinks, right? So before structures, before tax optimization, you got to learn how law categorizes reality, right? So you got to understand how to distinguish between different legal concepts, spot dangerous assumptions in your thinking, understand how your lawyer and your legal professionals are reasoning and how they're thinking. And then you've got to recognize when you're out of your depth with them. And you've got to be able to follow professional conversations and then ask better questions. We're going to cover all of that in a practical legal course for business people. All right, next lecture is where we get started. This is just the introduction. In the next one, we're going to deal with ownership, probably one of the most misunderstood concept by business people in terms of law. Specifically, we're going to be dealing with ownership, benefit, and control, and why business people often confuse them and why it can often lead to legal disasters. So the next lecture is where the real fun stuff begins. Thank you for your time, everyone, and hopefully I will see you in the next lecture.